So when I was very young, I noticed that most of the things that I wanted to talk about really made people angry, but I was also good at drawing, so what I learned how to do was draw the things that people would get angry at me about if I said them in conversation. And that is how my comic strip, Nina's Adventures, came about. This is an example of it. Just black and white, pen and ink. There's another example of it. I started doing these cartoons in my early 20s, and what do I have next here? Right, that's another example of it. Just drawings, just on paper. When I was in my mid-20s, I got a syndicated newspaper comic strip, so that was different than just drawing my own self-syndicated comic. This was with Universal Press Syndicate, I think, and it was in the mid-1990s. It was before the internet, and this was the way that you got your work seen if you were a cartoonist, because there was no internet yet. This comic strip was called Fluff. I did it for, I guess, 2 years and pretty much burned out. I'm going to show clips soon. Wait. And then I made animation, short films. And after doing short films for about 8, 9 years, I did my first feature film, which is called Sita Sings the Blues. I will show you the trailer for that now.
You know what Sita does then? How she actually is able to tell these people that she drops the jewelry along the way, right? And that's how they were able to find it. It went all the way up to she didn't know the jewelry at first.
I mean, no, remember she's not wearing any jewelry because she left everything before she left Ayodhya, and she came with
She left that? Yeah, she did.
Right, she just came with her son-in-law.
Don't challenge.
Right, so that was a feature film. I've really skipped far ahead in time. I made this when I was in my 30s, shortly after visiting India for the first time and having my relationship fall apart. This movie is free online. I released it under a Creative Commons share-alike license, which is a copyleft license, in 2009. I've since dedicated it to the public domain. You can get it all over the place. And this was like a film festival darling. It got great critical reviews, and it brought me unexpected fame. After I made this film, I became a copyleft advocate and actually a copyright abolitionist. I became artist in residence at a nonprofit called questioncopyright.org. And with them, I made a series of short films about copyright called Minute Memes. Here is one of them.
Copying is not theft. Stealing a thing leaves one less left. Copying, it makes one thing more. That's what copying's for. Copying is not theft. If I copy yours, you cut it too. One for me and one for you. That's what copies can do. If I steal your bicycle, you have to take the bus. But if I just copy more of a thing. That is what we call copying. Sharing ideas with everyone. That's why copying is fun.
Right, so the idea is that copying is not theft, and I live by that idea, so I put all my work online for free. I finished Sita in 2008. I think I made this little film in 2010, and back then the internet was really amazing, and I thrived on it. Things are a little different with me and the internet now. I'm actually trying to get away from the internet. But more on that later. What do I have next here? Right, so also after Sita Sings the Blues, I started doing a web comic called Mimi and Eunice. This is just some examples. I'm not doing this comic anymore, but I'm just going through chronologically. I have a book of Mimi and Eunice cartoons, which I didn't bring. Some more. And also, I got into quilting, because I wanted to do something with my hands. These are all quilts that I made when I was still living in New York City. This is actually a photograph of my studio in Urbana, Illinois, where I live now. Made money. And then I bought this big machine, which automates the quilting, so that brought me right back to doing everything on the computer again. More pictures of this. These were in collaboration with my partner at the time, whose name was Theodore Gray. He's one of the programmers that started Wolfram Research. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. They make software called Mathematica. He designed the user interface for Mathematica, and he also was able to translate my drawings into paths for the computer to stitch. Another example of what we do. Oh, you know what? Oh no, this is great. This is actually an animated quilt. When you put these frames together, you have a galloping horse. And we also got an embroidery machine, and this is an example of how I put my stitching obsession into my next movie, which is called Seder Masochism, which is showing at the Moscow Jewish Film Festival tomorrow night. This is called Had Gad Ya, and it is completely embroidered, and I'm going to show you this clip. It's about 3 minutes long. You can see there is a stack of these things. I'm just sewing them there. They're matzah covers used in Passover, and we made about 125 of these. Each matzah cover has 6 frames on it, and you will see coming up how that turned out. Right, so, oh, right, this one has no credits. So sadomasochism is based on a Passover story, and like I say, you can see it tomorrow night. I don't remember the name of the theater, but it's part of the Moscow Jewish Film Festival. And I made a movie about Passover because I was raised by Jewish atheists, and we didn't really practice Judaism except to observe Passover. And that's what the movie's about. Aha! Right. So the first scene of this movie that I animated is this one. This is actually the last scene in the movie, and I made it after watching the American film Exodus from 1960. Has anybody heard of this film, Exodus, starring Paul Newman? You had? Okay, one person. Well, I had never seen it before, but I watched it for this movie, and it has a famous soundtrack. And another singer in the 60s named Pat Boone wrote lyrics to the soundtrack, and it became this big hit all before I was born a little bit. I heard the song for the first time just, 12 years ago, and pretty much immediately started this scene. This is what? This is politically incorrect.
God gave this land to me, this brave and ancient land to me. And when the morning sun reveals her hues and plains, then I see a land where children can run free. So take my hand, walk this land with me, and walk this lonely land with me. Though I'm just a lad, when you are by my side, with the hand of God, I know I can believe.
Yeah, so that's the most watched thing I've ever made. It's been viewed more than 10 million times on various channels. I animated it using Macromedia Flash 8, which is obsolete software. I had to use an old 2007 computer. Since I started making sadomasochism, I had to actually completely learn new software because the software I was using was so obsolete. Keep going here. So this film, it's about Passover. I had made half the scenes of the movie in Flash. They told the story of Exodus from the Old Testament. After I made those scenes, I wasn't really sure what the movie was about. I took a year off and kind of became a radical feminist in that year. So ultimately, the film Sadomasochism became largely about the prehistoric goddesses that were worshipped prior to the advent of Abrahamism, prior to the Hebrews. And I collected a bunch of images of old prehistoric goddesses and animated them. And this is what came of that. Okay, and you can see that in Sadomasochism as well. This brings us close to the present. I will show you the trailer for Sadomasochism. I have not made anything big since finishing the film last year. I have been thinking about the state of the internet and the state of social media and spending a lot less time on Facebook and Twitter and trying to understand what has gone so horribly wrong with the internet that once had such freedom and promise. But that's not really what my presentation is about. My presentation is about my work. So I will end with the trailer for Sadomasochism and hope that you will see it tomorrow night.
Do you think reading those sentences actually help you?
I don't care.
Okay, that's it. Does anyone have any questions? Anything specific I could talk about while I'm actually here? Sorry, I don't speak Russian. Yes? Yeah, the blog, sadomasochism.com, has all the credits in the movie, including all of the music credits, so you can find them there. I did make a soundtrack for Sita Sings the Blues, and that's around. There's CDs, and I think you can get it on Spotify, something like that. But I did not make a soundtrack for this, because there was no way I was going to clear the copyright permissions for this. So you have to put it together yourself. Somebody was saying that on YouTube the movie has audio silenced out. I didn't put the movie on YouTube because I know that YouTube automatically does that. The place to get the movie is archive.org. But yeah, the internet, things get automatically silenced, automatically taken down. And no, there's no official soundtrack for it, but you can pick together yourself some credits. Yeah, so copyleft activism. After while I was working on Sita Sings the Blues, which is the film that radicalized me, I still thought that copyright was useful, and I still believed that it benefited me somehow as an artist. What I learned from making that film is copyright was not actually benefiting any of the musicians that had to do with that music. What it was doing was preventing the music from being heard. So the music was all owned by large corporations. The artists were all dead. The artists didn't get any of that money in the first place. And the consequence of the copyrights was that nobody could share or even find this music. In fact, the music in Sita Sings the Blues I only found because record collectors were illegally sharing it with each other in violation of copyright. So when I thought about my own film and what its future would be, I thought, I want people to share the film. I want people to be able to see the film. So if I enforce copyright around it, that will actually make it more difficult for people to share and see the film, and the consequence will be that people will ignore the film and it will become obscure. So that's how I got into it, and of course I freed Sita Sings the Blues online, and I ended up making more money that way than I had ever made in my 20 prior years believing in copyright. So I've found that the easier it is for people to share the work, the more successful the work can become and the more successful I can become. And as for being an activist, for a couple of years I did speak extensively about copyright and copyleft. But I realized that the best way to take an action around copyleft would be to make another movie. And the goal for this other movie, Sadomasochism, would be that I would completely ignore copyright. And that's what I did. So I used any music that I wanted for the sake of the quality of the art. I did not consider, or I forced out of my mind any copyright or licensing considerations. As for other people, I mean, there are many different tactics that copyleft activists are using. Most people use free licenses. They're a bit complex and misunderstood. What else? There are people trying to reform copyright law. I don't think they're going to succeed. My biggest inspiration is just the vast numbers of people that are completely ignoring copyright. Again, this was 10 years ago, so the internet was a wild and free place 10 years ago. It's different now, and I'm still passionate about free culture, and I still would like to abolish copyright. That will never happen, but I would still like to. But the internet itself does not have the promise that it once held. Yeah, so I don't have any great copyleft project or copyleft vision at this point, because I see the biggest problem facing everybody right now is social media addiction and surveillance. Yeah, well, Sita Sings the Blues was obviously inspired by the Ramayana, the Hindu epic, and I was not seeking a story. I wasn't seeking to make a feature film when that happened. I felt like it came to me. Sadomasochism was partly in response to Sita Sings the Blues because of the identity politics that were brought up. And people were saying, well, you're not Hindu, you're not Indian, how dare you make this movie? You should make a movie about your heritage. So I said, okay, I'll do that. I don't know if I'm going to make another film, but I don't think it's going to be about religion. I'm thinking about something based on the story of the Emperor's New Clothes. You know that story? The Emperor's New Clothes. I'm sure there's got to be a Russian version of it. It's a Danish story by Hans Christian Andersen originally. The Naked King, probably, yes. And everybody admires his beautiful clothes, except that he's naked. And that is related to the idea of scapegoats. Give that word? A scapegoat in Russian. What is it? Okay. Yeah. So these are related. I'm thinking about scapegoats a lot because, again, my concerns about the internet and social media, I see a lot of scapegoating and mobbing behavior. I myself have been targeted, and it's very upsetting. So maybe I'll do something about that, but maybe not. I don't really know. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I mean, there's no doubt that when I see those things, I go, wow, that is so cool. What it means for us as a society, I don't know. It's obviously not human, an individual human being communicating with another human being. It's, like you say, it's neural networks. I'm going to think about that. It seems like human thought, it seems like individual thought is in danger right now, that individual freedoms are less and less, and more we are thinking as a group. And that's not all bad, right? Like, things we can do as a group or as a gigantic brain are amazing. They're things we could never do as individuals. But at the same time, the dark side of it is so dangerous, because we form mobs and we just crush any individuals that dissent or go against the dominant thought. The United States right now is super polarized. Like, I've never seen it like the way it is now, where if you think the wrong way, people they will not tolerate it. They will not tolerate any sort of difference in their own group. And the consequence of this is that people are just, they're not talking to each other, just completely split. And I think the internet has a lot to do with that, and the fact that we can so easily think together instead of thinking independently. So I'm going to think about your question more, but when I think about neural network art, it's like, yeah, it's really amazing, and yet it is the product of networks rather than individuals, and maybe I'll draw some connection with that. I don't know. Really, I can talk about anything. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Feminism is like humor. You don't really incorporate it. You just have it as a point of view. So it's not that I incorporate it. It's that, like, things that I used to think were funny or innocuous, I don't think are funny and innocuous anymore. Or things that I used to accept, I question now. And also, I guess, what else? It's funny because it's not like it's the topic, It's more of like a point of view. Well, it's not really something to promote. So the problem with feminism and the problem with any idea is any idea can become an ideology very quickly. Even a great idea can become an ideology, and ideologies are dangerous. So I don't really want to promote feminism as an ideology, because if people don't come to it through their own experience and thought, it's just another cult. So I find radical feminist analysis useful for me to think about things, but I don't want to actually promote it. If that makes sense. Also, I don't know if it's true here, but in the US, everything is called feminism. Like, the word is meaningless. It can be you could have completely contradicting programs and people will say it's feminist. Like, people will say anti-abortion is feminist, or abortion rights are feminist, banning abortion is feminist. It doesn't, having a child is feminist, not having a child is feminist. Wearing makeup is feminist, refusing to wear makeup is feminist. So, I mean, what does it even mean? Radical feminism is a particular type of analysis. Look it up. It's based on it's like a class analysis. It's looking at women as the reproductive class. Yeah. Well, feminism, I can't say. Radical feminism, I could say. So, like I say, feminism is meaningless as a word. Well, radical feminism is the idea that women are oppressed based on biology. And it's a class analysis where, well, you'd be surprised. So the reason I'm a scapegoat is that there is great dispute right now online, and particularly in the US and increasingly in Western Europe, about what a woman is and what biology is. So in the US right now, at least among the liberal half of the polarized US, woman is defined as anyone who identifies as a woman, which means that you could identify as a woman, or any of the men here could identify as women, and then the ability to talk about reproductive class and the biological basis of women's oppression goes away. It's not possible to analyze reality that way or even describe reality that way when there's no coherent definition of woman. So that's what's going on. And yeah, I have said in public that women don't have penises. And for this, my films have been banned, including in my hometown. The art theater in my hometown outright banned my film for saying this. People, they hate me. They hate me in my town. They hate me. There are mobs of people online that have targeted me. I've been banned from Facebook for several times because I've said that women don't have penises. That's considered, yes, but they say it is transphobic. They call that, they say it's hate speech. This is the problem, right? And this arose out of my own tribe, right? Of the liberal, enlightened thinking, progressive people. But right now, everyone in the United States has gone crazy on the left and on the right. And the internet has a lot to do with this. And people are just not capable of taking a step back and thinking about reality. Their reality is now the internet, and it's these, people are not thinking for themselves, they're thinking as a group. And I am really quite terrified. I mean, this is extremely dangerous, and all of our history that we have of totalitarian movements, it's happening on the internet, it's happening on social media. And I mean, it seems, right? Like, it seems crazy, and yet most people I know are caught up in this. In fact, there's a makerspace in my town, which has become basically a cult center of this ideology. So, wow, will we have freedom of speech again? That is a great question. So as far as I know, the United States is the only country that has this strong First Amendment right, freedom of speech. Well, right, because the most communication now happens online, which is happening in these privately owned platforms. So you cannot force a private entity to protect the First Amendment. And I don't really know what's going to happen. It's a big issue right now in the US. I think we're losing it. My hope is that the gigantic social media platforms will eventually be reclassified as utilities instead of as private companies, that it will be acknowledged that they're functioning like, a power grid, electricity or telecommunications, and that they will have to respect the First Amendment. But I don't know what's happening. I'm really worried. And I guess because, so much of the start of the internet so much of the culture came originally from the United States, that whole valuing of freedom of speech sort of came along with it, but it's gone now. And in the United States, like liberals, progressives that I know, they don't believe in freedom of speech anymore. They think that it's a conservative conspiracy. So, I mean, it's like, yeah, I'd be laughing if I weren't crying, Like, it's horrible. Like, I never thought I would be blacklisted there. Yeah. Yeah, Canada, like a lot of Americans, when Trump was elected, I thought, oh, maybe I could move to Canada. But Canada's gotten worse. Yeah. And there's a feminist in Canada, Megan Murphy, who has a online magazine called feministcurrent.com. And she's been banned from Twitter permanently. Most feminists I know have been banned from social media permanently. And yeah, it's weird. It's like you can't, disagreement now is considered hate. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, that's what's really on my mind, and that's what I really want to talk about. And I don't know how we're going to solve these problems. And obviously people are thinking about this, but I don't know what's going to happen. It's like a George Orwell novel. Yeah. I mean, what I've noticed in the U.S. is that, like, we're supposed to have this political system that balances things. We're supposed to have left and right. But the problem is that left and right are both extremely authoritarian. So, I mean, I think the reason that people on the left have become so authoritarian is in response to the people on the right. But they're doing exactly the same things, and they're just as, I mean, honestly, and whoops, hit my microphone there. In some ways, I'm more afraid of the left right now, which I've never been before. But I don't see either side of the split being a viable alternative to the other. They're just more like, the more you oppose something, the more you become like that thing. So they're the same. Maybe it's possible that all the people that are seeing what's happening will just pull back and create something new, but the two-party system's not working. I don't know what's going to happen. It's a one-way road. Yeah, I'm not comforted. Does anyone else have any ideas? No, I'm just as pessimistic as you. It's just I don't like it. And also the question for me is what to do about art, right? Because I've always made art in response to, troubles. But now I don't really know what I can do to get through this period, especially because the internet is where I publish my art and show art. Right, working with sacred books and just how offended do people get. So the thing about Hindus is there's billions of them, or millions and possibly billions of them. So Hindus are extremely diverse, and there is no Hindu community. There are people that claim to be the Hindu community, and those people are righteously outraged by all kinds of things. But they are not actually the Hindu community. They're a small, politically oriented group with political goals. So those people, Hindu fundamentalist nationalists like the BJP people in India, they hate my movie. They hate just about every movie. I mean, they love to censor movies, which was the great thing about putting it online for free, because it couldn't be censored. In the United States, collaborators on my movies were Hindus. It was incredibly popular among Hindus. It's incredibly popular among Hindus in India. It's popular among Hindus in Europe. It's really popular among Hindus because they get the jokes. Similarly with sadomasochism, Jews are very diverse. There is not a Jewish community. There are extremely rigid, conservative Jews that will claim to represent Jews. There's Zionists for the last 60 years have been claiming to represent all Jews. Part of sadomasochism is critiquing this idea. No, not all Jews are Zionists. So it really depends on the Jew. And interestingly, there's been almost no anger about sadomasochism because of that. Like I say, the film has been banned because I say women don't have penises. People get really angry about that, but all the criticizing of Zionism, all the mocking of religion, all the actual offensive stuff in the movie, nobody's gone crazy about that yet. One person did freak out at a screening because he saw this juxtaposition of images in a very weird way. He thought that I was blaming Jews for the bombing of the World Trade Center, which I was not doing. But he saw that in the movie and he freaked out at the screening, and he's been leaving comments over all the clips online, outraged about this. But he's fairly unusual. But at least I thought, oh, it's got to do with the actual film. It's not because I said women don't have penises. So even that was a relief. No, they think they don't care about the movie. They don't want the movie to be seen. It's like, I have broken the rule by saying this. And so they just say it's hate speech. They say it's not up for debate. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, none of us really know why, right? Like, you know, we all think that we know what reality is. I mean, I do actually believe that reality exists. I actually believe that you can measure things, and that there is such a thing as evidence. Yeah, I don't want to be funny. I'm as confused as you. I don't think it's about. I don't think what's happening is about the ideologies that people are fighting over. I think it's about something bigger. I think everybody is terrified. I think, you know, political structures are collapsing and civilization is collapsing, and people want a sense of control. They want to believe that they can create their own reality, or whatever they say is real is actually real. And anyway, I don't know answers. I can't speak for other people. I just know I believe in reality, and sex exists. Biological sex exists. That's how animals reproduce, including humans. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying not to kill myself, This is like, I don't know. What will tomorrow bring? Techniques in the animation had a lot to do with the software I was using. So I had access to Macromedia Flash in the mid to late 1900s. The early 2000s. And the limitations of that software actually determined the style that I used. A lot of my choices have to do with doing as little work as possible. So I try to make it as easy for myself as possible instead of that. Later, I learned called Moho Pro. Right, Moho Pro is the software I use now, and it's capable of more than Flash, and so I do different things with it. But yeah, a lot of the style is just determined by the tools that I have. The what? Oh, the first is the idea? Yeah, everything kind of happens at once, Like, if I'm learning a new tool, I'll get ideas from using it, like from learning it. Like the images, it's like a feedback loop. I'll make something move, or I'll draw using the tool, and then I'll go like, aha, if I bend this a little bit more, I can do this, and then sometimes that will even determine the story, or I'll think, oh, I can make a little figure or a little character. So yeah, it's really hard to say what comes first. Yeah. 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 No, I think trans rights are. I think everybody deserves human rights. So I think, medical discrimination and housing discrimination and all that, it's like no one should be subject to that. I think, prior to 10 years ago, I mostly knew transsexuals when I was living in San Francisco. That's another funny thing about this, is that people don't seem to realize that I have a very long history with a lot of trans friends and queer friends. They assume that because I'm going against current orthodoxy that I hate trans people or queers. No. But prior to 10 years ago, trans women knew that they were male. Like, that was the whole point. Like, trans meant that gender and sex were not the same thing. So, I have this saying, I respect your humanity, not your identity. So, yeah, everybody should have human rights. And radical feminists and transsexuals used to be allies. Actually, with transsexuals, we still are allies. But, we used to be like this. And something changed very recently where we're like on opposite sides of something. I don't know a single radical feminist that wishes any harm on trans people. But that said, we do want some sex-based protections. So women's sports, we want for women as female people, regardless of how people identify. Women's prisons, we want exclusively for female people, regardless of how they identify. Like if a male person identifies as a woman, that does you do not want that to mean that that person can go to women's prison. We're in favor of, or maybe I, and many other radical feminists, we're in favor of additional facilities for trans people if they're needed, like additional bathrooms, additional prison wings, additional sports, right, like a sports category for trans people. That would be great. But we are very concerned about the impact on women that the current dogma is producing. Yeah. Anything else? I don't even know how long I was supposed to go, and I don't even know what's going on here. I guess someone will just stop us. You want to see any more clips? I got lots more. Yeah? I'll show you more. Yeah. Let's see here. So this is the opening scene of sadomasochism, and actually what you were saying about style, a lot of this came from learning this new tool, Moho Pro, and a lot of, they're like very simple shapes that sort of cut into each other, and that was not something that I conceived of beforehand. It was something that the software brought me to. This is 5 minutes long, and it is the opening of the film. Want to see anything else, or do you want to just go to the movie tomorrow night? I could show more. I was downloading this stuff in my hotel. Oops, come on. Let's see. You want the 7-minute one or the 2-minute one? What? All right, here. Whoops, it's too loud. Too loud? Is it too loud? Right, when is this supposed to end? I think it should end now, right? What time is it? Okay, great, perfect. Thank you all for coming. Yeah, check it out online, sadomasochism.com.